Good morning. We've just finished a sesshin, 7 days of meditation. Some of you have participated in that. And I'm feeling myself already kind of going into what we call this everyday bodhisattva practice period, which happens from January through April. An opportunity for each of us to sort of reset our intentions, like how do I want to practice in my everyday life? The center will make some offerings that you can participate in, but then you have some freedom in how to make your own schedule or your own commitments. At least that's how we are setting it up. And it's becoming a tradition, I guess, that for these practice periods I'm discussing one of Dogen's fascicles, essays. Dogen is the founder of our lineage in Japan. And I've chosen to speak about what is translated as being time. I don't want to go into that now because we'll start that in January, but in a way, Dogen's discussion of being time is a discussion of impermanence. And if I had to give a kind of introductory talk about Buddhism, like what are the core principles of Buddhism? Yeah, I would probably say impermanence. Everything changes. And conditionality, interdependence. Everything is connected with everything. Now, some things are more connected than others. Like there's some sort of causal proximity. If things are closer to each other in time and space, so they influence each other more. You know, if you think about the COVID pandemic and how it unfolded, it was just over there in China. Right? There were some reports. So it's not in proximity, so it's in China. But then things are connected, and then the virus and its effects arrive in the middle of our lives. So when you say everything is connected, it's like that's like Buddhist sauce that you can put on everything, It's like there's differentiation within that. But the Buddha said something, really general, like when this is, that is. When this arises, that arises. When this ceases, that ceases. So there's conditionality. It's like you can look at that in your own life. If you continue to do your habits, your life is going to be pretty much the same. If this is, that is. Which can be a good thing or a bad thing, If you continue your habits, that could create stability, or you can perpetuate problems. It's very open. This kind of just noticing that there's conditionality, just noticing that there's cause and effect, and that this cause and effect is distributed widely over the field of existence through complex mechanisms, And the third thing is, or let me first point out, impermanence and interdependence or conditionality are two sides of the same coin. If everything is connected and there's a change somewhere, then everything else changes. And because change happens, and it ripples out through a system of interconnected parts, then we are experiencing interdependence. We separate these two, but it's one reality. It's like we in Buddhism, you would say like that's how things are. It's not debatable. I mean, you can try to debate it, find in other words, find something permanent. And show that this idea of impermanence is wrong. Or find something that's isolated and not conditioned by other aspects of reality. Find that independent, separate, permanent entity. And then you can refute these core assumptions. But as long as we don't find that, it's reasonable to say that there is impermanence and conditionality. And then there's this principle of no self, which is very confusing. It's like so easily misunderstood. Like there's no, so it's like, I'm here. What are you talking about? No self. It's like, what are you talking about? I'm here. So my view is that the notion of no self doesn't obliterate, is not meant to obliterate or deny your sense of existence. I mean, this is obvious. There's a sense of existence. Now the question is, what do you make of it? How do you relate to that sense of existence? When you hear the word no self, you should hear no separate, permanent self. This self, this sense of existence that we are, is not separate, and it's not permanent. In other words, it's changeable, and it is conditioned by everything that surrounds us. So now I've described Buddhism, so we can go home. Right? We're done. We're done. We've understood it. It wasn't hard. Let's bring out the cookies. There's a story being told about Siddhartha Gautama, later called the Buddha, this guy, 2,500 years ago in India, and he grows up in this like sheltered palace, it's called. Like I assume that we live more palatially than the Buddha did. He was a prince, but when you read the word palace, you think like he was some regional prince. Like I think there was like a house made from mud or something, and they had some nice things, but they certainly didn't have everything we have. So I think we live more in a palace than Siddhartha did. It's my assumption. And supposedly his father didn't want him to, be exposed to the perils of the world, and kept him sheltered, and said, don't leave the palace. But then he couldn't help himself, so he ventured out. And he encountered an old person, a sick person, and a dead body. And it was an existential shock for him to realize that this wasn't just something that's like happening to other people. This is going to happen to him. He is of the, I am, as some people practice with these phrases, I am of the nature to grow old. I am of the nature to be sick. I am of the nature to die. Right? So if you describe Buddhism from a bird's eye view, the way I started, it means nothing. I mean, that's not true, but nothing from the point of, an existential insight. Impermanence is working on this body and mind. I have this idea, the wind comes, blows stuff around. Those of us in Boulder have just experienced that massive wind. And electricity goes out. And the electrical company is just turning it off because there's danger of fire from these conditions that will burn stuff down and destroy people's lives. I mean, literally, people die in fires, or houses burn down and then you stand in front of the ashes and it's like, what now? So when this stuff happens, right, wind blowing, cup falling down, breaking, you see the pieces. You get sick, as I just did, Then you have this phrase, it's like, oh, impermanence is working on the world. Impermanence is working on me. Of course, this phrase is wrong. There isn't like impermanence as a thing working on a self as another thing. This self, which is a no-self, is arising as the product of conditions. It's like not there conditions knocking at the door of the self is like, let me in, I want to work on you. You're being brought forth by causes and conditions. But anyway, back to the Siddhartha and his existential shock. Now, when I think about the story, it's like, it's not possible that the Buddha, Siddhartha Gautama, not known as the Buddha yet, lives in the palace and doesn't see any people getting older. I mean, the people around him, they grew older as he was growing older. It's not conceivable that he didn't get sick as a child. Of course he got sick. So when he ventures out and sees a sick person, it's like, how is this really new? I'm sorry. It's not a very plausible story. I mean, maybe he was sheltered from seeing a dead body. I mean, most people don't see dead bodies for a long time in their lives. I mean, not most, I'm saying in our culture. I remember my grandmother, when she was on her deathbed, I got to visit her, speak to her. I'm not sure how much she heard me. And but then I said goodbye, and the next time I didn't see her anymore. I didn't see her dead body. That somebody else took care of that. And then I went to the funeral, and then I was among the family, and we were talking about her and our memory of her. And so the living were talking about her, but the dead body was, hidden. I mean, if I had wanted to, I could have demanded to see her and arrange it or something, but I just went along with how it was done, so I didn't get to see her dead body. And I think that's the case for many people. So the shelteredness is a kind of complex thing. It's like you're staying away from something, or you sort of defer it to, like, we're all getting older, right? But to be really old is like deferred in our mind. It's like, okay, like really old, like even when you're 70, it's like, oh, really old is when I'm 90, or something. And sickness is a temporary thing that you get over. I mean, unless you have a sickness you can't get over, and there are people in the room for whom that's the case, right? It's like, no, you're not getting over it. You get to live with it for the rest of your life. So this existential shock or this existential awakening is something like, this isn't at a distance from this existence. It is actually completely built into it. Now there's, whether you do a kind of layout of principles, or you tell Siddhartha's story of, bringing it closer to home, it's still a kind of bird's eye view of your life. Oh, I am of the nature to die, or I am of the nature to get sick. It's like, oh, here's my life. Like, as you're thinking about it, maybe, or you're feeling it, but it's like there is this object called my life, and it is subject to some forces, or something like that. One reason I think we meditate is to break this separation. You sit down, you don't have to sit down, it's just that, I'm not going to go into that today, but it's just that this posture allows for something. You sit down and you appreciate as an immediacy, as a direct experience, the experiential quality of being alive. We can do this right now as you listen to me, but you say you bring attention to the activity of breathing. And you without trying to manipulate your breath or make it into some sort of meditation objective to breathe calmly or deeply or something. No, just you bring attention to the activity of breathing that is already happening. And you find your body expanding and contracting in this activity, or that is the activity. And there are feelings associated with this expansion and contraction, this filling and this emptying. There are other components of your experience, a certain kind of mood, let's call it. I don't know if mood is the right word, but you might feel tired, or you might feel a little anxious. Something is unsettled in you. Or you might feel joyful, like this existential moment of noticing yourself as a breathing body is like you're saying yes to that. I don't mean like jumping with joy, but more like this, like, oh, it's good to be alive. But these moods are coming and going. Sometimes it's a little up, and sometimes a little down. Like you feel the burden of being alive, or you feel the joy of being alive. It's not permanent. But right now, as you attend to breathing and this existential moment that involves more than just breathing, you find something there. And what you find is not permanent, it is changeable. And you feel, if you tease it out, you feel the fragility of your life. It's conditionality. It depends on so much. I mean, the breathing depends on air coming in, oxygen being delivered, and carbon dioxide being exhaled. If you're in a place where there is no oxygen, you die. It's very fragile. It's quite resilient too, It's like because the organism has evolved to stabilize certain conditions for staying alive. This is kind of miraculous. And we are taking for granted, because evolution happened over a long period of time, the conditions of evolution we take for granted. We can't question those. I think that's also why we can't really deal with human-caused climate change. It's just too given that those conditions are stable. It's like to really let in how unstable they have become is almost like, it's like on a basic level of functioning, the organism can't really deal with that. For me, when I approach meditation in this way, that it is an intimacy with conditionality and impermanence. It's what can arise from that is also an appreciation of aliveness. You're not thinking about it. You're not writing a poem about how beautiful life is. You're just feeling the intimacy of being a fragile organism depending on its surroundings. In this intimate fragility, this is where the existential problem is that Buddhism is trying to address. Like, it's normal that this organism, this body-mind, wants to stay alive. However, if you get too attached to this impulse, you're starting to fight how things actually are. You are starting to deny your mortality. Am I still making sense? It's like a little bit of grasping and attachment to this life process, right, starts to separate you from this impermanent conditionality. And you become, subtly or not so subtly, defensive against reality. This idea of a self, right? No self. Buddhism says no self, and then you think, well, what are you saying? I exist, No, but it's this subtle defensive posture against how things actually are, which is impermanent and conditional, that where you're grasping yourself and trying to separate yourself from this vulnerability. So Sukha, said, no self just means things as they are. I think you're getting a feeling for that now. Like, if you read a phrase like that, I don't understand stuff like that. It's like, I could say I read this, it's like, no self means things as they are. What? This is it's so abstract. I mean, I'm quite used to thinking abstractly, but even this just makes... And I think so much of the literature is like you read it and it sort of makes sense, but like, what? But I think I've said enough now that you get a feeling for it. Things as they are could mean that you don't create a conceptual overlay over the immediacy of your experience. So you're not doing that. That's like things as they are, right? But no self also means that the way things are, impermanent and conditional, is how they are throughout, including this body and mind. And so there isn't a separate entity that is like standing apart from this. I sometimes think I need to make things simple, to not for you, but just for myself, and then I can share it or something to, what are we doing? It's like, what is this Zen practice? Zen practice basically has two flavors. No, chocolate and vanilla. It's always just chocolate and vanilla. It's zazen and action. Zazen and action. Oh no, you can decide. Zazen is chocolate. What is zazen? Zazen is like, I describe it as allow your experiencing to be exactly what it is at this time. You become, you widen your field of mind, your field of attention, into into a broad awareness, and you allow that awareness to receive anything that appears. We just talked about the sensations of breathing. You allow the sensations of breathing to be exactly what they are. You allow your mood to be what it is. You allow the sounds of the city to be what it is. So it's a profound relaxation into, you could say, things as they are. And it can feel like an opening. It's like you're opening up to how things are appearing right now, which is, you could say, the other side of that. It's a giving up of resistance. A softening into acceptance. In some ways, but it already gets too philosophical if I say it that way. It's a giving up of self in the sense that you're not like creating this shell that tries to separate itself from the conditions of life, but it's like you are letting this now be. I mean, I want to say let it come in, but there is no in that where it comes into. It's just, it is that way. Things as they are, like that. This gesture of opening, we call it that, is not much of a doing. It's a stopping of a doing of defense and control. So that's the one flavor. And the other flavor is what I just called action, is to be ready to respond to the conditions. Whatever condition arises, you respond. Now, you might immediately have a doubt. It's like, yeah, but how do I respond correctly? You know, how do I do that without making a mistake? Well, that's secondary. First, find yourself, find if it's true that you are always responding. It's already happening. It's not something you need to, like, train yourself to do. Now, maybe not all the responses are wise, but that's secondary. That's like you study. That's, again, zazen is like you notice the responses that are happening. You let that happen. You let that in. You let your experience the way it is. You enter into the way you're always already responding. You are taking stock in a way, but I don't mean analytically. You're just noticing, well, this is what I'm doing, you know? When there's a sound, I go like this, like it should be silent. I don't want to hear it. Or if it's cold, you contract. It's like, I don't want to be cold. Is this a response? Is it wise? Maybe not. Maybe you can let cold happen. You find out at one point, is it too cold to let it happen? That point does exist, you know? So you could say, you know, zazen and action. There's receiving experience, and there's expressing your relationship to the 10,000 things, causes and conditions. Now, to separate them is artificial. But as a practice, it's kind of good to separate the receiving from the expression, because if you stop expressing all the time, you can actually study your impulses. So you're sitting still is studying your impulses. Like, now I want to jump up and scream, but the Zendo doesn't allow me. So is it really necessary to jump up and scream? Oh no, it's not necessary. So this is how you can maybe develop wisdom. What is actually necessary in my habituated responsiveness? Now, I think there is an existential question in this, which is, what can I rely on? If everything is impermanent, everything's constantly changing, I am not a separate, reliable self and identity. In fact, I am, sometimes I think like if you take this to the full consequence, it's like you're just some sort of what object should we take? Piece of wood that's drifting on the ocean. There's all these waves. Let's say that's the causes and conditions, and you're this piece of wood, and you're like, wherever the waves go, you go, and so there's a big storm. It's like lots of turmoil, and it's quiet. Is it like that? If you give up the self, you're just sort of like drifting around with the causes and conditions. What can you rely on? Are you just subject to all this stuff that happens in the world? What can you rely on as like from where to live your life? I mean, maybe this is a trumped up question, like this is a big existential problem, and you don't even feel it. But many people object to Buddhism because it's like, if everything's impermanent and everything is just a mess of conditionality, how's there any orientation? But here's something interesting: is awareness and the capacity to respond are always there. That's actually your life. The solution to this question of reliability in the face of impermanence and conditionality is kind of like to jump right in. Jump right into that. Not like, how do I manage it? How do I manage that? This perpetuates the separation, right? It's like you want to jump right into this mess. This beautiful mess. But that, just this image is also wrong, right? It's like there's nothing to jump into because you're already in that pool. That's already your life. It's not like something you have to choose or make happen. It's already that way. It's just, in that sense, we speak about realization. You want to realize that it's already that, and kind of say maybe what's needed is to say yes to it instead of no. Like, I'm here, but not really. Do you know that in yourself? You say, I'm here, but a little bit not. But some. Okay, so right there. This is my life right now. And then find that this ability to be present with, presence, let's say, presence and responsiveness are always there. Now, there's a difference between when I say always there and permanent. They're not permanent. This presence and this responsiveness arises in relationship to that which is the case right now. You know, this is where, if you're a spiritual practitioner and you're philosophically inclined or something, right, then you want to grasp that and you'll say, what is that? What is that in me that is always present and responsive? And then you'll come up with some clever description. You say, that's my true nature. That's my true self. Then now you've made something permanent. Because this is what the mind wants to do. That whatever you say, it sort of generalizes across a multiplicity of moments. And you say the little word I, right? I. Okay. Then it's all these moments in which you did say I or could have said I, they're all included. And then you have generalized over all those and you've fabricated a self. But if you do the practice of zazen and you just bring attention to breathing and follow those sensations and then everything else that comes into the field of awareness, then that is things as they are, but where is the self? Where is this general understanding of yourself as somebody who's like this and has had that history? It's not there. You can construct it again, but it's not there. Experientially speaking. This is what we're talking about. And in that experience, where do you find reliability? You find reliability in the wakefulness of your mind, and you find reliability in the responsiveness of your body, that you can respond to causes and conditions. Sometimes that responsiveness means your willingness to die, metaphorically or literally. Nothing I can do here, so you give up. Sometimes the best thing to do. Stop fighting, go along with what is developing. I'm not saying that's always the right response, but sometimes it clearly is. We all know that. You know, one way, Buddhism is a language, you know, it has all this stuff and it's hard. Like you read the language and you think you understand, and then at some point you realize, I don't understand anything here really, unless it's experientially clear. Like the three treasures. A couple of people asked me to take the precepts, and we're going to have a ceremony, I think in June, and you know, and the first precepts are to take refuge in Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. And because I'm talking about reliability, and then I'll end here, but it sort of suggests, oh, there's this reliable thing. I take refuge in Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. What are you taking refuge in? Like the ideas of Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha? What I just talked about is taking refuge in the Buddha. Taking refuge in chocolate and vanilla. Simple. Receiving and expressing. And taking refuge in the Dharma, there could be different interpretations, but basically, the fact that we can know this, like the way I've tried today to express it, you know, the fact that there can be a clarity about how life is in its fundamental conditions, this is the Dharma. But you need to clarify it. What I just said, is it true, you know? Like I said, I don't mind, you know, go tell me about something permanent. And then refute impermanence. then if you find that, then rely on that. That's fine. Buddhism claims you will not find that, then you need to rely on what you can actually rely on, not some imagined permanent thing. That's the Dharma. And then relying on the Sangha is to walk this path with others. It's easier. There's already the Sangha that some wisdom teaching is being transmitted, right, through the generations. This is like, imagine everyone has to come up with this themselves. You have to find out everything for yourself. I mean, this is not true for anything in human culture. You're given so much from your parents and from the culture that's around your parents. Like if you had to invent everything, fire. Oh, I'm really scared of fire. Like, this is already mastered. It's amazing. I have my son, I can show him how to use a match. He's not afraid. He burned himself the other day. It's like, the danger is still there, but it's controlled. And similarly with the Dharma, it's passed on and it's shared, and now, this is the vertical Sangha, you could say, the lineage. But now there's the horizontal Sangha, all of us in this room. We're studying experience. We're clarifying how to live in the sense of Buddhism, without suffering, with wisdom and compassion, in the midst of things as they are. So this is refuge. This is something Sangha is something we can create. And we're doing that. The Buddha treasure is something you're responsible for. That's your practice. That's your very intimate clarification. Thank you very much.